5 years ago, the world faced a viral outbreak that led to sweeping authoritarian measures, including mandates requiring vaccination for employment, travel, and public gatherings. Among those affected was Pete Parada, a drummer and music producer who in 2021 was fired from his band The Offspring after refusing the vaccine due to a medical condition. Today, Pete joins me to share his journey through the fallout of that decision, the challenges of losing his career, the profound identity shift that followed, and his ultimate rediscovery of his passion for music. Pete's story is more than just a personal account. It's a powerful reminder of the courage it takes to stand by your principles, even when the odds are stacked against you. Hey, Pete, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it, man.
I'm glad to be here.
So you were the drummer for The Offspring, from 2007 through 2021. Now you're with the Defiant, a much better option given your circumstances here. But for people who don't know about your background, let's kind of get into it just a little bit, for people who don't know your story yet. You were let go in 2021 from The Offspring over not really your refusal to take the COVID vaccine, but your doctor literally barred you from taking it because you have Guillain-Barré syndrome. Is that am I saying it properly?
Yeah, Guillain-Barré. Yeah, Guillain-Barré. Yep. So yeah, even with a medical exemption from my doctor, it didn't matter. Like, the music industry lost its mind. And it was just, I think it was more business than anything. It was just a mad scramble to turn the money faucet back on after terrifying people into their houses for a year straight. All of a sudden, everybody wants to get back to work, wants to start making money. But it's like, well, how do we ask people to come back out in large crowds without looking like, a bunch of insensitive jerks who don't care about people? So that, the industry kind of came up with this idea of, well, the vaccine is here, so we'll call it a fully vaccinated tour and everyone's got to get it. And then we can get back to work, which was, I don't think there was a lot of ideology in the industry. It was just an excuse. Like, here's a look, now we don't look like jerks. Everyone take this thing and then we can go back to work. And even, when I was doing research early on in early 2021, when they start rolling the vaccine out, and I know my history with vaccines is not good. And so I was hopeful for this one. I was like, all right, it's a new technology. Let's take a look at it. But my wife and I scoured for as much data as we could get, of which there was not a lot. And it was just kind of a wait and see of like, all right, well, they didn't have anybody with any autoimmune conditions in the trials. It was all just perfectly healthy people. So for me, it was like, well, I don't know how anyone with my background is going to react to this. So let's wait. And in the waiting, we learned a lot of, one of the first, wave of side effects coming out was people with Guillain-Barré syndrome. And, I was not a good candidate to take this new technology, this vaccine. My doctor wrote me exemption for it. It didn't matter to my band. It didn't matter to the industry at large. It was just, everyone's got to do this. And that's the only way back, which, to me, there's not a lot of imagination there. And I understood people wanting to get back to work. I wanted to get back to work. Like, none of us can just take a year off and not be hit financially by that. But for me, it was bigger than that. Like, this is my health. I know my own body. I know my own history with things like this. And so I wasn't a good candidate for it. Kind of came to a head with my band in the summer of 21. We had just put a new record out. And I was out in LA all spring, filming music videos and doing photo shoots and setting up all the promo for the album release. And we're getting ready to, go back on tour. We had rehearsal starting up in August. And I get a phone call from the band's manager that was just like a firing squad. Like, he just went full scorched earth at me. I don't know if he thought he could bully me into this, but it was, it was super confrontational and threatening. And he made it very clear in no uncertain terms that I was either to get the vaccine or I would be replaced. And, I'd go to the other band guys and I'm like, hey, here's this guy. He's representing you. I don't think he's representing you very well. Like, you might fire me over this whole spiel, but you need to know that this guy is abusive to me. If he's being abusive to me, I can only imagine how terrible he's being to your crew. A lot of their crew had been there longer than me. So I tried to have that talk with them. They didn't care. It was like, nope, we're not speaking to that. The only issue here is you and your vaccine status. And, it deteriorated pretty rapidly. There was talk of like, oh, maybe we just get you some papers, get a fake card or whatever. And I certainly considered every option. It's not like I was just like, oh, I'm righteous here. And like, no, I was trying to save my job, my family security, my career. Because to me, it was like, it's not just I'm about to lose this gig, but am I largely unemployable to the entire industry now? If you're one of the few people that I thought at the time, oh, I'm one of the few people that won't do this, come to find out many, many people in the industry didn't do it. Tons of people with fake cards, tons of people who refused. And, for me, it was more of, I don't want to take the fake card because then I lose my voice. Now I'm part of this system that I don't believe in. Like, I don't think this is the only solution to get us out of this pandemic. I don't think this is a one size fits all thing that everyone should subscribe to. So, I wasn't going to do that. And so the situation deteriorated, like I said, really rapidly, and to the point where, I found out that I was replaced from my Southwest app when I saw that my flight to rehearsal was canceled, my hotel was canceled, my access to the band calendar was revoked, and it was just radio silence from everybody from that point on. And so I gave it a month of like trying to wait and see, like, oh, maybe they'll come back, maybe cooler heads will prevail, maybe everybody can calm down a little bit and we can talk about this. And it just was nothing. There was no coming back from it. So, I wrote up a statement to put out because the band's going back on tour. They had a show in Nashville. People are hitting me up for tickets for all these shows that I know I'm not going to be at anymore. And I don't want to have this conversation 500 times, like try to explain over and over and over. Well, what happened? Oh my God. So it was like, let me just put out one statement. I will explain why I'm not there anymore. I didn't disparage the band in any way, but I also wanted it to be hopeful for people who are also struggling with this decision or struggling with, feeling abandoned here, which is what it felt like, when you're cut off overnight, not just me, my wife and my kids, like, our wives were friends, our kids grew up together, and all of us were just cast aside overnight. That was it. And so that was a tough thing to handle. But I also wanted to show, I've got 2 daughters, and I wanted to show them that, there's no opportunity, there's no job, there's no amount of money that you should be sacrificing your bodily autonomy or doing something that is wrong for you or bad, potentially, life-threatening for you. You don't do that to keep a job, and if I can't stand up for myself in this moment and show them the way to stand up for themselves, then I'm really missing out as a parent as well. And, and also to find people around the world, like maybe there's somebody else that feels lonely here. Maybe there's somebody else that feels lost here. And so we put this statement up. I just thought it would be, here's why I'm not in the band anymore. The people that care about the band will care. And it just, and no one else. And then it took on a life of its own. It really just kind of took off. Like Zuby shared it around, and while I was waiting for a firing squad, we were met with this wave of support. Like people started messaging me from all around the world, like, oh my God, thank you for saying something. I thought I was the only one that felt this way. Thank you for writing this without, anger and bitterness, and explaining your process and your points so clearly. I've used your writing to show to my friends and family who don't understand why I don't want to do this. And, I've had close friends and some family members that were like, man, I really needed to read that. I was very judgy of people who wouldn't do this. Like it took it to be personal to people before they could see, like, oh, wow, I'm getting carried away here. Like, this is someone I care about. They're making, good points here about why they're not going to take it. And I've just been like, no, everyone has to take it. And whoever doesn't is a terrible person. So it was neat that was the response we were getting. And, I got called. There was piles of people that jumped in to call me a Nazi and, a grandma killer, and that I don't care about anyone and I'm being selfish. And, literally wishing death upon me and my family. I hope you get sick beyond recovery. I hope your family gets sick beyond recovery. Like it was a bizarre place to be. And a lot of the nastier death threat kind of messages, you click through to their profile and it's all, rainbow flags and tolerance and love and peace and whatever. But it's like, for some reason, not to anyone who won't do this. Like, I'm all peace, love, and tolerance, but not you. And it was a wild experience. And I wasn't looking for that kind of thing. I didn't expect it to be some sort of lightning rod or the poster child for any of this stuff. But that's just kind of how it shook out. And it became a bit of a lightning or a lighthouse for anybody else who was in the same position. So I start hearing from people in other bands and actors and people with much bigger platforms than mine that are kind of, kicking the tires a little bit, like, hey, how's it going? How's cancellation? Are you, because I'm thinking of saying something, but, people don't want it to cost them anything. And my response was always like, I can't tell anybody what to do here. And I'm not going to lie, it's been brutal on myself and my family, but you got to have your line. If you're not willing to stand up here, how many more incremental rights are you going to allow to be eroded before you finally push back? And I think it was tough to explain to some people who really didn't understand this. Like, even my bandmates did not understand my stance. I think they were confused by it. I had been very compliant, the drummer, we're in the background. I do what I'm told. Here's my script. I perform it. And so I think they were stunned that I wouldn't just do what they wanted. And so, losing my train of thought here, but it was nice to have that response from people that were like, hey, I thought I was alone here. And, a lot of people that asked about how's it going, I'm thinking of saying something, none of them did. And that's fine. Like, I don't have any judgment on anybody. Like, if you went and got a fake card, if that's what you felt was best for you and your family, great. Like, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm not here to, give medical advice or anything. All I could speak was from my side of the fence, from my own experience of, here's why I'm not doing this. And beyond my medical reason for not doing this, I don't think anyone should have to do this. Everybody should have a choice here. No is a complete sentence, and you should be able to say that. And then when the mandates were coming down and people were getting fired left and right all over the place, it was just so hard to watch because I knew what those people were going through. I knew the agony of the decision they were trying to make. I mean, it crushed me trying to navigate this. Like, my kids had to watch me on the floor having a panic attack. Like, am I going to lose my whole career over this thing that, I know is not right for me, but it's bearing down on all of us. And it was a really intense and brutal time for my whole family.
Yeah, that whole pandemic era was a brutal time for a lot of us. I mean, I lost some friends during that time for various reasons, mostly I think because of my own unwillingness to comply with a lot of the mandates that we had here. And I'm in an area where there's more conservative leadership, and the mandates didn't last as long as other places like New York and some of the more progressive cities. But, I refuse to do the stand on the stupid little circles that are 6 feet apart. And I refuse to do the mask thing. I got kicked out of places. I had my gym membership revoked. Nordstrom Rack, kicked me out of the store and called the police on me. It's been a whole slew of things, and I think people sort of resented the fact that I just took the stand that I did. But like you said, there has to be a sort of a line that's drawn in the sand in certain instances when there's this severe government overreach that could metastasize into additional policies that just continue to trample on your rights until you have none left.
Absolutely.
You being a nationally touring musician, though, I mean, you had a lot to lose. You're in the public spotlight. It's a good paying gig. I mean, you were with the band for 14 years. I mean, it's obviously you're a principled guy. So where does that resolve come from? I mean, what's sort of like the guiding principle of your life that allows you to be able to stand on business in the face of that type of adversity and that type of pressure when you have such a high visibility job?
Yeah, for me, it was my wife and my kids. That was it. That was my focus. That was the point of everything I was doing was protecting them. My kids were doing musical theater at the time, even though we live in a red state here in Tennessee. The musical theater community was maybe even worse than the music industry at large about vaccine mandates and testing and masking. And, so I knew they were going to face a lot of pressure from their directors, from their peers, to do this thing. And I didn't want that for them. I didn't want them. So it was like, all right, well, if I don't stand up here, then what lesson am I teaching them? Because when your kids start being teenagers and stuff, they stop listening to what you're saying, but they're always watching. They're always seeing how you're going to react to something. Like, that's what they take in. And so for me, it was like, well, if I can show them how to stand up, even though it's hard, even, in the face of everything that we are about to lose as a family, for me personally, like, it was still the right thing to do. And so to me, that kind of superseded everything else. I didn't want to put them in a position where they had to lie for me with fake cards. I didn't want to lose my voice there. The Offspring had already made a little video where they changed their, you got to keep them separated, to you got to go get vaccinated. And I'm just like, well, I don't believe in this. I can't be any part of this. If I'm taking a fake card, now I can't speak out. And every time something stupid like that happens, I just have to sit there and take it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to put any of us in that position. It was, I had a friend of mine say about like a year after everything went down, he's like, yeah, but what difference did you really make? Like, you're a small fish in a big pond, and, did you really change anybody's mind? And I was like, that wasn't what it was about for me. I wasn't trying to make myself the center of anything. I had an audience of 2, and that was my kids. So if they got the message, then that's all that I cared about. I can't live my life trying to manipulate the way that I'm perceived by the public. It's not my, I don't have any control there. People are going to feel about me however they want to feel about me. And I can't let that take up any time in my day. Yeah. But, for real, like, my wife is the strongest person I know. And to have her support that's what held me together. And the interesting thing after, my story broke was seeing people who I expected to be there for me run for the hills, that, people I'd known and worked with for a couple decades, kind of distanced, like running away, like, I don't want to get any on me, right? I don't know him. And what was surprising was the amount of people who ran towards us. And, especially a friend of mine who, we'd known each other a long time. We weren't overly tight, but we were cool. And he called up about a month in, and he's like, hey, checking in on you again. Are you playing drums yet? And I'm just like, no, I don't want to play drums. I don't want to, I'm trying to figure out how to put my life back together. And he's like, yeah, that's what I thought. Well, I'm going to come down there. I got some songs. You got a studio. Let's make a record and get you back on the horse. Right. And he did. He came down here for a week, and we kicked ideas around. And that gesture alone changed everything for me, because I had forgotten from being in a band like the Offspring, where there's one person in charge and one person writes everything, and it's very regimented that you stick to that script. I'd forgotten how much fun it is to actually be creative, how good it felt to make something and feel like you were putting a part of yourself in it. And so just making this record with my buddy reignited that. And then I start getting, requests from people like, hey, can you play drums on my song? Can you do this? And that kind of thing started rolling in, which is what kept us afloat, at a time when it was like, all right, well, I've lost my job. I don't know how this is going to shake out, but here comes all this goodwill of people like, hey, let me pay you to do this. Let me pay you to do that. And that's what got us through. That's what kind of turned my head back around, because it was dark. There was a stretch there where my wife and kids, somebody was with me at all times. It was like I was in a bad place and somebody had to keep their eyes on me until I could pull out of it and turn it around. And it was, it wasn't that it was a big deal that I wasn't in that band anymore. But there was an identity death in there of, well, if I'm not this person who plays in this band that, is world famous, then who am I anymore? And I had to come to grips with that was something I did. That was not who I am. And, letting that piece go was a really eye-opening experience for me to be able to move forward and be like, all right, what's next? And, over the last couple of years, like I've been back on the road plenty, like no one cares about your status anymore. Like everyone largely went back to work. I mean, no one cared at the time, which was the point I was trying to make to my camp that no one was willing to listen to, because they go back on tour a month after all this happens and they're playing festivals, and I'm getting calls from friends of mine and other bands that are like, why are you not here? Like none of us are vaccinated. Nobody's asked us for cards. Nobody cares. And I'm just like, yeah, I know that. But you can't argue with a brick wall. You can't argue with the television. If someone is like, this is the only way out of this, the TV told me so, like there's not much I can do with that.
So, okay. So that had to be so frustrating hearing from other people that they weren't even verifying your vaccine status and allowing them to play at these shows that you're supposed to be at in this other band. I mean, they gave an interview where they said that it wasn't a personal decision. It was just a logistical decision. I mean,
well, it was rough. I mean, we really went back and forth with him for a long time, and he was either unwilling or unable to get vaccinated at the end. And we looked at every scenario, and we just kept coming into roadblocks. Everybody needed to be vaccinated. One unvaccinated person could have been disastrous to the whole tour, and put the whole tour and everybody at risk. So we just couldn't, in the end, we couldn't take an unvaccinated drummer or any member of the crew. Anyone who wasn't getting vaccinated couldn't come out on tour with us.
Yeah, I'd say it wasn't even so much a personal decision. It was just
wasn't really our decision.
A logistical decision. Like you can't travel, you can't fly. There's so many things that you can't do without being vaccinated. So it just wasn't possible.
Hearing what you just said, it makes me sort of question that. I mean, do you believe that it was purely logistical when there were other musicians that were able to work and play without having their vaccine status confirmed?
Well, the problem was there were ways around this and ways to do this. I knew plenty of, bands that like, oh, this singer's got this problem. He's got a medical exemption. The medical exemptions were the same as your cards to most of these promoters, because here's the thing, nobody wanted to cancel shows. All of the paperwork and stuff was just an excuse to be like, look, we get to gather in crowds again now. We can go make money again. It wasn't ideological. So yeah, I understand they didn't want to do that logistically, but it could have been done, and they chose not to. I don't think it was personal. I still don't take it personally, but I think it was more, how dare you not do what we're telling you to do? And when you're in a position of power like that, like I don't have any power there. All I can do is stand up for myself. But, when you're in the power seat and you're like, I need you to do this thing, and someone says no, then if all of your relationships are transactional, then you just go, oh, you're not doing what I want anymore? Okay, I'm all done with you. We'll never speak again. And so while I try not to take it personally, that's a little bit personal, but I think overall it was business, and it was just like, well, we need to get back to making money and you're being difficult. So goodbye.
Let me read you something. I think you posted this. It's a quote from Punks for Liberty. And they said, Pete Parada, former drummer for The Offspring, is a modern day example of standing firm in the face of adversity. When he chose personal autonomy over compliance, he became a symbol for those who value individual rights and medical freedom. Pete Parada's story reminds us that liberty often comes with sacrifice, but staying true to our principles is worth the cost. In a world that increasingly demands conformity, Parada's resilience inspires libertarians and punks alike to stand tall, speak out, and fight for the freedom to live life on our own terms. What did you feel when you read that for the first time?
I was knocked out. I mean, I got a little teary. I'm not going to lie, because it's been a hard 3.5 years of navigating this. I mean, we're still finding our way forward as a family, and just with myself and my career. Like the world looks very different after all of this. And I think the frustrating part is to look back on it and know that it was all so unnecessary. And I think that's what gets me the most. And I don't spend any time there. I can't get snagged there, because if I go back to a place where I'm angry about things, then I can't create from there. And I don't pay attention to what they do. I don't keep an eye on things. My wife likes to say she's angry enough for both of us. And she will look into stuff to make sure that there's nothing we need to correct when people like to rewrite history. But to read something like that, to your question, was beautiful. Like, it was like, oh, it wasn't all for nothing. Like, if it was helpful to anyone who was going through the same agony, and I call it agony, like, this decision was not something I took lightly. Like, I tried to communicate with them in so many different ways about my reasonings for this. And like I said, it was just talking to a brick wall. And so it was really kind of uplifting to have the Punks for Liberty thing. I was unexpected, when I saw it. I was just kind of blown away by it, because it felt like, okay, it wasn't all for nothing. Because I tried to explain to people that were very questioning at the time, like, well, I don't know why you won't just do this. It's just, why are you afraid of a little needle or this and that? And I'm like, I can't express to you how oversimplistic your complaint is here. But I'm just like, if you are worried about staying in the good person club, there is a checklist that you have to hit, and you can't miss any boxes. And I tried to explain, like, you're not building up any capital by complying more and more for these things that you don't agree with, because eventually you're going to bump into one that you can't do, and it'll all have been for nothing. And I've had a few people come back around since then going, I can't believe this. Like, I did everything right, but I can't go along with this new thing. And now I'm ostracized now. And I'm like, I tried to tell you, there's no winning with that crowd. There's no winning with the good people club. And, like, people going, I don't understand why you're doing this. I thought you were a good person. Like, I am a good person. I'm standing up for myself and my family. It's a personal thing for me. I don't, everybody else took it very like I was doing something to them when I was making a choice for myself.
Yeah, there was this shame effect that people tried to do to sort of guilt you into doing what the system wanted you to do. I mean, it was a scary time, not just because of the virus itself. I mean, obviously not, just given the statistics on who was actually impacted and what the actual damage was of the virus, which is very minimal on the grand scheme of things. But it was a scary time because of how people reacted to it, and having the people closest to you just willingly turn on you overnight just because somebody on TV told them to. I mean, so let me ask you this. As far as, the guys in the band, I mean, are you back in touch with any of those guys now? Has anything changed? Have you reconnected on any of your professional relationships since that time?
Not with Offspring or anyone in that camp. No, I've not heard from anybody. And like I said, I leave the door open. Obviously, I don't want my job back with them. Nobody wants that. I don't want that. They don't want that. And largely, it doesn't really matter who's playing drums for that band. That's not what it's about. But for me, we were friends. We had 14 years together. There's years where you're on the road more than you're home. So these people are supposed to be your family. Up until everything went to hell for me, we were family. We're all going to get through everything together. And, your family, as far as you're going to do what they want. And as soon as you're not, then you see how close you really were. So I hold the door open if they want to come back and repair friendships. I'm totally down for that. I think we need that. I think a lot of people did a lot of horrible things and treated people really poorly through all of this. And I think it's okay to come back with even a simple apology of, hey, I was really fearful. I got carried away. I did not handle that well. I'm sorry. I bailed on you and your family in your darkest hour. Simple things like that. And I know a lot of people were acting out of fear. That was the point. The fear was pushed on us so hard that it was tough not to get wrapped up in it. And nobody makes good decisions from fear, which is part of the plan. If you terrify everybody, they're much more open to your magical solutions. Even if they don't quite agree with it, they're not going to give it that much thought because they're scared. Yeah. And so I've got a lot of grace for everybody here. I'm certainly open for anyone that wants to make atonement, but now I haven't heard from anybody at all.
I mean, a lot of good things came out of it. It was clearly a very difficult time in your life. I wasn't aware of the severity of the panic attacks and that stuff until you just said it a few moments ago. But one of the things that did come out of it is, I mean, that's sort of how I met you, right? So I was actually, so this was right when I got hired over at Timcast. And Tim brought me out for interviews. So I was out at Castle. For anybody who doesn't know, Castle is like the old studio. It's a massive, it's like a country mansion, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And I was there just waiting on Tim in the kitchen, and he was recording a segment, and I'm hanging out looking at this massive stack of eggs from Chicken City that they have. And Tim just walks out. He's like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" I was like, "Oh, shoot, Tim Pool. Okay, word." So I said hello, and he's like, "Anybody give you a tour yet?" And I said, "Nah." So he gives me a tour of the house, and I mean, you've obviously been there, and so I saw the studio.
I've gotten lost in there.
It's easy to do, bro. And there's a skate park inside the house. It's crazy. So he had to go record another segment, so he left me with Carter, his music producer. And I'm a bass player, and I've played bass since freshman year of high school. And Carter was like, "Hey man, we got some time to burn. You want to lay some tracks down?" I was like, "All right, cool." So I'm there for all of 30 minutes. I'm already cutting tracks. And one of the songs you ended up, actually a couple of songs you ended up, you played drums on the whole album, I think.
Yeah, and everything.
The whole project. So Tim brought you out during this time and reached out to you, and you played drums on one of the songs that I played bass on. And then when it was time to shoot the video, Tim brought us out to do the music video. And then that's how you and I first connected. Yeah. So it's so even though it was a dark time, you find the people who you're meant to be with. You sort of find a new tribe whose values are aligned with yours and whose destinies are sort of intertwined in terms of the long-term plan that God has for your life. And that's one of the more positive things that has come out of it. And maybe that's one of the takeaways from all of this is through adversity, you can use it to, it's almost sort of like a transformation, like a snake skin, or I'm trying to think of a metaphor that's not super cheesy. But that's why they're metaphors. But yeah. For you though, I mean, I guess what message does all of this? I mean, what lessons for you could be sort of communicated, I guess, more broadly to society? What would be something that you would say is sort of a takeaway that you would give to other people to inspire them? I guess if I'm not sure where I want to go with this. In terms of this specific scenario, I mean, they're looking at obviously trying to do this again in some ways. I mean, there's stories that the UN is implementing a vaccine tracking digital ID system across Africa ahead of a global rollout. For people that want to say no the next time, I mean, what advice do you have for them in terms of how to handle that situation, given that you've already gone through it, you've seen the good, you've seen the bad, you've had good things come out of it, but obviously there were difficulties along the way. I mean, what would you communicate to those people who might have to face this again in the future?
I think my main point would be the more people that stand up, the faster we can shut things down that aren't good for society. It's not good to mandate something on everyone or to say as long as everyone does this one thing, we'll be fine. You come to find out a place like New Zealand that locked down so hard and mandated so hard, exempted 10,000 of their government officials, from taking the vaccine, but everyone else had to have it. When things like that are happening, it should give you a little more courage to stand up and go, yeah, that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to do it. So I would say if you can stand up for yourself locally, start small. Like it's like a muscle that you have to stretch. I was a very compliant person. I was raised that way. And, like I said, the band was probably surprised that I stood my ground here because I had always just done what I was told. And I think the more that you stretch this muscle, the easier it gets to have that sense of yourself, and you stand a little taller. Like start small. When you go to the airport and they have the stupid thing where they want to take your picture while they look at your ID, you can decline that, opt out of the scanner machine, take back the places where you can, even if it's uncomfortable for you. And sometimes like the TSA guy will be like, stand in front of the thing and be like, no, I'm declining the picture. Well, you're going to have to do it eventually. Well, eventually is not today. So we're not doing it today. And largely they don't care. They don't need it. I don't know what it's for, but it's conditioning people to get used to giving up another thing. And it was wild to just see, you stand in those long lines and you watch people go up and just perfectly fine with it. And then when somebody saw me one day decline it, then I saw like 5 people in line behind me decline it. And then come to talk to me while we're waiting for our bags to go through the metal detector of like, oh, I didn't know I could turn that down. And I was like, says so right on the sign. There's ways to take more power back in your own life. And, not saying that everyone has to light their life on fire and be some kind of a story, but you can have ownership over what you're willing to put yourself through and what you're willing to agree to. And the more people that realize that, if as many people who wrote to me saying, I didn't do this, I didn't feel good about it, I got a fake card, or I got the shot, but I didn't want it. If all of those people would have just said no, we would be in a very different place than we are now. And when people get mad at me and say, why are you still talking about this? COVID's over. And I'm like, well, because I don't know that anybody learned anything. And I'm afraid that when it happens again, you guys are all going to cave again. We're all brave right now. Let's remember that feeling. Let's remember, like, I don't like how all of that went down. Next time, I'm not going to go along with it. And I think that would go a long way.
And you can make the argument that this wasn't even about COVID. This wasn't about the virus. This was about being subservient to authority and just doing what you're told because someone in a position of power told you to do so. And one of the things that's come out of this is that now a lot more people question the source of that authority and the degree to which we should just shut up and obey. Right. And especially, when it comes to they use these justifications like the science, it's about the science, trust the experts. Well, now, fortunately, people question experts more than ever, and we've been through this process now because of COVID, where we see that, there are people who believe that science is just it's just passively subservient to authority, when really the science is about questioning, right? It's continuing to ask questions until you see what the thing is that's true. And that's how we know it's true, because it's survived the process of being questioned so many times. And
exactly.
And if it's not COVID, it's going to be something else. Next time it might be climate change. They're talking about climate lockdowns. But, I guess the more broader issue is that more people are sort of waking up and not being slaves and not just doing what they're told because somebody on the idiot box, the TV, told them to do so. So maybe, we're on a better trajectory in terms of where the world is headed because we went through this and went through that process. And maybe it's sort of a cathartic, I guess, on a global level.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope enough people realize, like, hey, that wasn't quite right. Like, I mean, if the pre-lap dance and the cheeseburger and the French fries and the donut and the junk food wasn't enough to entice you to take the vaccine, like, I don't know how anybody looked at that and said, they really care about my health, I'm going to go get a dozen Krispy Kremes after I put this random stuff into my body. Like, none of it made any sense. And I think a lot more people have woken up to that and are turning the TV off, like, let me get a break from being bombarded with this and get back out in the world. And I think that's the best thing any of us can do, is think more local, like take care of your own community, check in on your neighbors. Like, everything that you can really have an effect on is, in square radius of where you live. And I try to put as much effort into, all right, how can I be better for my community? What can I be doing? And I think the more that we think locally, it can expand out from there. But if we just look at the big picture and go, well, what the hell can I do? I guess can't fight City Hall, so shucks, I'll go home. It's like, no, you can stand up in small ways, which, eventually will lead to bigger ways.
So let me ask you this. So, I mean, over the past couple of years, more and more data has come out about the dangers of these vaccines. Right now, there are 20 countries calling for an end to COVID vaccines, in part because of this residual DNA that has been identified in certain samples, which doctors say can lead to genomic instability, cancers, and other serious conditions. You're somebody who had a medical condition, but it speaks to the danger of these vaccines. And they went so hard trying to get everybody to put this into the body. And now we have record numbers of athletes dying. They're collapsing on the fields. We have record numbers of young people in their teens and 20s and 30s developing aggressive cancers and tumors and having heart conditions and just spontaneously dying. I mean, all the doctors who were shut down in 2020 who warned about this before the vaccine was even rolled out were right. So I guess, I mean, what's sort of your response to knowing that, you know, not only did you take the stand that was right in principle, but just from a medical standpoint, this was actually a pretty dangerous product, and a lot of people are being hurt by it. I mean, how do you process that?
Yeah, I mean, I it's hard. I had a friend be like, "Well, you must feel pretty vindicated now," and I was like, "Well, there's no trophy here. A bunch of people got hurt. Like, you know, and that was always my point. If I'm right here, a lot of people I care about are going to be in trouble," and that was a hard thing for me. You know, I sent the information that my wife and I were able to find about the trial data and stuff. I sent that to the smartest people I knew, pointing out, hey, why did they run these trials? Why are they publishing their relative risk reduction, which is meaningless from a statistical standpoint, instead of the actual risk reduction? You know, relative risk gets you to 99, 100% effective, right? Where the actual risk reduction of the same study is less than 1%. And that's where we're at. You really, the best they could say was it was going to help less than 1%. And that was already the fatality rate of anyone who was catching COVID in the first place. So it's like, if you're taking this unknown intervention that doesn't improve your odds in any meaningful statistical way, then what's the point of all this? And that was the scary thing, to be like, well, if they're fudging the numbers right out of the gate, you know, and you could see, like, my wife took a screen grab from the CDC website, January 2021, where it says, you know, while we are hopeful that this will stop transmission, it was not tested for that. We didn't look into that at all. You know, we don't know the long-term side effects of this and that. Like, but then they're on TV going, oh, it's 100% effective. It's going to stop transmission. You know, everyone from Rachel Maddow on down was like, if you get this vaccination, that you cannot be infected, you cannot catch COVID. Everybody got COVID. Everyone who got vaccinated got COVID multiple times. I played a show last year with this band that I knew. They were on the same bill, and the singer was lamenting, our whole band's got COVID again. I've taken 4 shots, and this is my 5th round of COVID. And I'm just kind of like, you know, I'm just sitting there like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, are you getting it yet? Yeah. So it's yeah, you feel vindicated of like, okay, yeah, we were right here. But that's the hard part, is when you're getting torched because people are like, the science is settled, you're anti-science, you're a science denier. And it's like, science is never settled. Science is, like, to your point, always being questioned, should always be interrogated. That's the point of science. We never go, hey, I've decided it's this, everyone, we can go home. And then when the narrative changed and they couldn't keep that on track anymore, then it turned to, well, the science has changed. The science has shifted. And it's like, well, I thought it was settled, you know, because that's what I got screamed at about, was you're a crazy person, you're anti-science. All these doctors said so. And I'm like, well, all these ones said not, and they got wiped off the internet, you know? So it's, I'm sure for those doctors, it's much more vindicating because of the beating they took, to come out the other end and know that you were right. But now, you know, the people that were wrong just kind of want to move on. Oh, no, nothing to see here. There's no residual effects. Kids are resilient. There's no learning loss. And it's like, well, everybody's health is so much worse now than it used to be. And everything about our healthcare system is set up to keep everybody like this rotating, like, belt of sickness all the time. You know, and that's where we are, which I'm excited about. Bobby Kennedy, really hoping he gets confirmed to get in there and, you know, start with our food systems. Why do we have all these ingredients in our food in this country that's allowed that are banned everywhere else? Like, how can we begin to unravel how terrible our health systems are in this country, not just our insurance system, but just right down to the food that we're eating and we're feeding our kids. Like, it's such a beast of a project to tackle, but it's got to be done.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. Hopefully he does get confirmed. I think it's a step in the right direction to even have the conversation about it in the first place. And there are some debates. There's some people that think maybe taking having stronger regulations on the chemicals that are in our food supply is increasing the size of government when we should be decreasing the size of government. Me personally, my mind's not entirely made up on that. I mean, I do think the government has a prerogative to prevent mass poisoning of its citizens. And there are people who would argue that many of the chemicals that are going in these foods are indeed poison. So it's a debate that I think needs to happen. It's long overdue. And it's good that it's coming to the forefront, whether or not RFK actually gets confirmed or not.
The conversation's been started, and that's always a good thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So I think there's a growing awareness generally among people, not just in this country, but across the world, about these types of things and our health, and who has the ability to dictate what we put in our bodies, when, under what circumstances, and under what circumstances we should or should not be compelled to do so. We were very close to, I think, to global tyranny in the form of vaccine passports that were going to be used to usher in the social credit score system, and we staved that off for a while. Hopefully, it's done indefinitely, but again, it's going to take daily resolve by people to again stick to those principles and to say no on a macro level, on a literally a day-to-day basis, and prevent these people from encroaching on our freedoms. For you, the future is definitely bright. I mean, it's kind of corny to say that, you know what I'm saying? But I just saw your band about a month ago. You were in town, and you guys sounded fantastic. What's next on the horizon? I mean, what's next in terms of your tour schedule? What do you got coming up for 2025?
2025, we're looking to do some more touring with the Defiant. You know, it's a more difficult project to get everyone on schedule at the same time. We're 5 guys living in 4 different states. Everybody has other projects they're doing. So when we can get it lined up and all get together, it's great. So we're, kicking around ideas to start doing a second album and, doing some festivals later in the year. So it's, that's kind of rolling out. For me personally, I'm here in my studio in Tennessee. I track drums for people all the time. I make drum loops and producer packs for the Splice company. And I do my own songwriting and have branched out into composing. So I'm composing the score for a feature-length documentary right now. Like, just staying busy in new creative ways that if you had asked me 5 years ago, what are you going to be doing when 2025 starts? None of this would have been on the list of things. It would have been like, I'll be playing drums. I'll be going on tour. I'll be sticking to the script, But so while it's a much more difficult, thing to navigate. There's not the stability there of having that gig where I'm going to get paid every week, no matter what. It's much more exciting. It's much more gratifying. And the work that I've done from everyone from, Tim Pool and playing on music with him to all these independent artists who've reached out to me around the world. It's been really fun to see not just, what I can do, but how much talent is out there. There are so many, we talk about, looking local, everybody in their local community, there are talented musicians, there are talented artists. Like, go support your local art, get out to local venues, see those bands, because every big band started somewhere. Like, you're going to get in on the front end of something, but there is talent everywhere. And while it can feel like white noise, because I think they said like 100,000 songs get uploaded to the internet every day. And it's just, there's so much to sift through. It's difficult to break through. But I think if you're making music for yourself or you're creating art for yourself, that's always a good thing. That was a big lesson for me to realize in all of this was, when my buddy came here and we made a record, I was like, oh, okay, these people may be able to say, you can't tour with us anymore, we won't allow it, but they don't get to tell me I can't create. I don't need anybody's permission to come down here, turn the lights on, and hit record. I can make whatever I want. And that was very liberating after coming from such a, I hate to describe it as a desk job, but that's what it was. When I got that gig, it was not like I was a fan of the band. It was just, I was known as the punk rock drummer guy. I was open to new work. They needed a drummer. it worked out okay. I thought we'd stay a few years, but then, we have a second child, and then your situation changes, and you kind of get comfortable in that space. So I think for me as an artist, being shoved out of the nest into the unknown and having to live in the uncomfortable has been really, really great. And I'm so excited for myself as a musician to explore so many new things that I didn't know I was capable of. When you're like, well, I'm a drummer and I do this and I do it really well, but to have found how much more I have to offer than that has been the biggest gift in all of this. Was really like, oh, it was time to go. Like, sure, I probably should have already been done. I'd gotten what I was going to get out of that, but it turned into a comfortable situation. And now it's exciting every day to have, like, oh, I've got to track drums for 3 different artists this week, and I've got to work on this song for somebody else, and I'm, going to compose this piece for the movie. Every day is a new kind of adventure, and that's exciting. So it's strange how, even though life looks different than it did, it's better, and I don't regret it at all. Like I said, I got through to my kids. I think they understand, mission accomplished there. But coming out on the other end of it and getting my spirit back and finding the love of why I started playing music in the first place, like it was nice to feel like I've been missing out here. I've been holding myself back of what I have to offer and how I can create. And that's been the greatest gift of all of this, I think.
Well, Pete, man, I thank you so much, man, for the stand you took and just for being a solid dude, man. I've learned a lot from you. I love your vibe and everything. It's always cool hanging out with you when we have a chance to connect face to face. And
absolutely, yeah.
Continue doing what you're doing, man, and being an inspiration and making great music, brother. I'm gonna let you have the final word. Any final thoughts that you would have for anybody who might come across this video?
Final thoughts. I think, again, what I've learned most in here was how to stand up for myself. And when something is hard, doing the right thing is necessarily hard. That's why it's the right thing. If doing the right thing was easy, everybody would do it and we'd all be multimillionaires, But when push comes to shove, stand your ground, think about what you really need and what you're being told. Like, is this situation right for me? Should I be here? Do I want to do this? And try to avoid appeals to authority, because there's a lot of straw man arguments out there that'll wear people down. Like, I knew so many people that were like, I didn't want the shot, but I got it because I was so sick of, the social pressure from my friends. I couldn't see anybody. And it's just like, wow, that's a big decision to base on because you were worried about what other people thought of you. And I think if we can realize that, we get caught up in our own heads of like, oh my God, everyone's going to think this of me, but no one's looking at you. Like, everyone's worried about themselves. Like, take care of yourself. Everyone else will take care of themselves. Don't make major life decisions based on what a bunch of strangers might think, because who cares?